Gestational Diabetic. I am your host, Traci Houston, and I am here to inform you and empower you so that you can be a confident member of your healthcare team. Quick medical disclaimer, none of the information in this podcast can be used to diagnose or treat any medical condition. If you have any concerns about your health, please discuss them with your healthcare team. Today, the beautiful lady Jorden came on to tell us her story about how her unmanaged blood sugars ended up affecting her son. And it's a crazy story, guys. It's not that her blood sugars couldn't be managed, but when she took her test, they told her that she was undiagnosed when actually she failed her glucose test. I found Jorden because in January, she posted in one of the gestational diabetes Facebook groups about what was happening and how her son had been affected by the unmanaged blood sugars. And she wanted to just spread the word so that other moms would know. And she wanted to give encouragement that yes, it sucks to prick your fingers 4 times a day, but it's so necessary because managing your blood sugars is a very serious matter. As you listen to the story, you'll hear that Jorden mentioned she had cholestasis. If you don't know what that is, cholestasis is when the bile flow from your liver is either reduced or slowed or stops, and it becomes problematic. And it is a condition that happens in pregnancy sometimes. And it can adversely affect your blood sugar, so it is linked to having a higher risk of getting gestational diabetes. Cholestasis in pregnancy normally happens later on in the pregnancy, as does gestational diabetes. So in the notes, I will list the risk factors and symptoms of cholestasis so that you can know them and just be mindful of what's going on in your body, just in case that is something that you might be experiencing. All right, guys, that's the background on this. So let's listen to Jorden's story. Hi, Jorden. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can you please start us off by telling us when was it that you were actually pregnant?
Well, my son was born in February 2019, so sort of late 2018 was when the problem started.
Okay.
The pregnancy.
And well, you say when the problem started, what trimester were you in then?
I had the blood test at 28 weeks, so it would have been just coming into my 3rd trimester.
Okay. And so it was a blood test, or I assume it was the 1-hour glucose test?
We actually do 3-hour test here.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do the 1 hour. We just go straight into the longer test here.
Gotcha.
So, but on the same day, I also had a lot of other blood tests done, just routine blood tests, checking iron levels and things like that. So there was a lot of blood tests going on that day, which is what possibly led to some of the incorrect information that came back.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so what happened? I guess let me ask first, did you have off levels in other things that maybe contributed to the issues you were having?
Yeah, so I had cholestasis of pregnancy, ICP,
Okay.
of pregnancy, and that leads to an increased risk of having gestational diabetes. So I had a higher risk factor of having that anyway.
Gotcha.
But that was one of the things they were testing for on the same day. If I give you like a brief sort of overview of what happened, so I went in on my 28-week checkup and had numerous blood tests, one being for the glucose tolerance test, others being to check iron levels and also to check my liver levels because I was having problems with itchiness during pregnancy. And off the back of that, I was diagnosed with cholestasis. And because they were so focused on that blood test, they misread my glucose tolerance test or completely missed it. I had failed it. And that led to me being told that I had actually got told I passed it, which it later turned out that I had not.
Wow.
But I did not find out for another 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. So you said 28 weeks, so plus 6. So you're at 30. Oh, gosh. Embarrassing. Let me just the math. So 34 weeks at that time, right? When you found out that you were.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's 6 weeks. And I mean, you know, sometimes we do have higher blood sugar for longer than just the time we were actually tested, you know. So for at
Yeah.
least 6 weeks, you were having higher blood sugars than that weren't in a safe range. So
Yeah.
wow, so that's at least 6 weeks of uncontrolled blood sugars. Okay. So then what happened when they actually realized that, hey, they told you the wrong information and now you had to, you know, rush to correct it or, you know, take action? What
Well,
happened?
they had a clinic the next day to speak to a diabetic nurse who would help me, you know, to teach me how to do my blood sugars and what I should or shouldn't be eating. And they advised they were going to get me on that clinic the next day. And the next day I received a phone call to say actually they couldn't do it for another week. So I had to go another week before I was able to get a monitor or any dietary advice or anything like that. So we're well into my 35th week at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I was into my 35th week when I started, or when I was given a glucose monitor for my blood sugars. Quite quickly from testing, you could see that my blood sugars, my sugar levels were not where they should be. And actually I was having a very strange issue where my sugars were actually dropping into hypo levels. So they were going too low, even after eating, which
Mm.
is something obviously that I could have picked up on had we been monitoring it sooner, but we hadn't. My body was overreacting and producing too much insulin,
Yeah.
and that was causing my blood sugars to drop. But by this point, I could eat and not get out of hypo, and they were concerned in regards to whether my placenta was failing, because obviously by this
Mm.
point it had been through a lot. And I was
Yeah.
admitted for monitoring at 36+2 because I'd had repeated hypos and reduced fetal movement. And I then stayed in hospital and was on a monitor pretty much most of the day. And when
Yeah.
I was 36+4, they came in and said they were taking me for a C-section in an hour. And that I had to have the baby.
Wow.
Yes, that basically my placenta was failing. They tested it after I had the C-section, and they confirmed that it was failing, and that if they'd waited any longer, I might have actually lost the baby. It was all very dramatic, but as you know from conversations with you, the problems did not end there, unfortunately, for my son.
Yeah.
So I had obviously myself been producing too much insulin during the pregnancy, which also caused the baby to produce too much insulin. After he was born, he couldn't stop producing too much insulin. Often this will resolve itself within a few days for newborns. After 2 weeks in the NICU and no improvement, he was transferred to a different hospital where a specialist team took over his care.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually he had to be attached to a sugar drip 24 hours a day. They were not
Oh
able to.
wow.
They tried to every time they tried to take him off of it, he would crash.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he was moved to the specialist hospital, where they also hoped it would resolve itself, but it didn't. And
Yeah.
when he was about 3.5 weeks old, they put him on some medication, which actually limited the insulin production. It's called diazoxide, I think. And after a few days on that, he was able to leave the hospital, but he had to stay on that medication. That was a difficult time because the medication can actually cause heart problems. So he had to go down and have a scan on his heart to make sure his heart was up to taking the medication, which is quite scary when you've got a little baby.
Right.
And at one point, he had to, where he had this sugar line in his body, it actually stopped working, and they needed him to have one at all times. So they had to take him and put him under general anaesthetic and put a line in his neck because the one in his leg failed. So my little baby, and he had this horrible
Right.
line coming out of his neck. But like I said, they were able to turn him around and get him out of hospital and on medication. That led.
So how long did he end up spending in the hospital?
He spent 28 days in hospital from birth.
Okay. Were you able to give breast milk, or I don't know if that's what you wanted, but I know a lot of moms are concerned about hearing stories of babies having low sugars and the hospital wanting to supplement with formula or just give formula in order to get their sugars corrected. So what was your situation?
I was really fortunate in that I quite quickly had a really good breast milk supply. So
Okay.
they did use formula for the first couple of days whilst I worked on getting my supply. But after that, he was able to solely have my pumped milk. He was not able to. They had to feed him because he had to have measured amounts of milk, so they had to feed him through a tube in his nose.
Right.
Just because of his blood sugars, they had to make sure he was getting enough food, basically. So, but he was able to have express milk, they were really good in the hospital, actually. They had a nurse who specialised in helping mothers learn to breastfeed, so she was really, really helpful in getting my supply to come in quickly and getting him on the breast milk and off the
Wonderful.
formula, because they do think
Yeah.
that can help with blood sugars if you're able to do it. Unfortunately, not everybody is as lucky. I think I was very fortunate that I was able to get that supply, and not everybody is that fortunate. And certainly I wouldn't say don't beat yourself up about it. It's you have to do what's best for your baby, and if I hadn't been able to produce the milk, then I would have been just as happy with the formula.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what happened when he was discharged from the hospital?
So as first time parents, this was all very much fun for us. We were
Yeah.
given strict instructions for our child. So he had to have medication 3 times a day, and he was not allowed to go longer than 4 hours without food. So that meant if he was asleep or even in the middle of the night, I had to wake him up and make him eat. And I had to check his blood sugars 4 to 6 times a day. And I was given a treatment kit for if he was having a hypo. So it's quite a lot for new parents to take on, I think.
Yeah.
But we did have a really good team of specialists who were on hand. Like, we could call them if we had any questions, and we did end up. We had quite a few hospital visits after that, shall I say? He's 18 months old now, and I feel like this is like a distant memory. But I certainly hope I don't have it with my next son. But when he gets sick, even now, he can have low blood sugars. So when he was 6 months old, he was they were able to wean him off the medication, and we still had to monitor his blood sugars regularly. So sort of 3 to 4 times a day, check his blood sugars, and he wasn't allowed to go longer than sort of 8 hours without food. Because although he was well managed, he still wasn't as a normal child would be.
Okay. So quick question. He's at this point, he was weaned off the medication. So was his insulin production normalized, so to speak? Because you said he was overproducing, and so that's why they put him on the medication to cut that back. Okay, so is his insulin at this point normal?
Yeah, so like I said, he has some overreaction. So he could go. It's difficult to explain. So like when he was born, he could only go 2 hours without food, and he would crash. As in, like, he would get very, very low blood sugars. And then as he got older, they were able to put him up to 4 hours. But when he was 6 months old, his body could go 8 hours without. So he could almost go through the night, but not quite. So you'd have to wake him up early to feed him. But then for some reason at the 8 hour mark, his body would then start producing too much insulin again. It's a weird thing, the pancreas. I don't know why it does what it does.
Yeah.
But so, and then as he got older, he was able to go longer and longer without food, and we wouldn't have to check his blood sugars unless we thought there was something, like if he was shaky or not feeling himself.
Okay.
Then apart from a few times, I think the most recent time was January, so thankfully not too recent. He has, if he gets ill, he, for some reason, goes back into producing too much insulin, so he'll have hypos, and sometimes he'll have to go back into hospital because we can't manage it from home if he's ill. So he spent
I see.
4 nights in December he spent in hospital, and 3 nights in January he spent in hospital. In January he ended up on a drip because they couldn't get him to keep his blood sugars up. But since then,
Gotcha.
he's had a real big turnaround, and he's doing really well since that January
Awesome.
visit. Yes, I'm very happy.
You said when he gets ill, then he'll have he'll go back into like an overproduction of insulin mode, which will make him be hypoglycemic.
Yeah.
So is that something that you can recognize as you're taking his blood sugar, and that you can at first try to manage at home? Or is that something that you realize, okay, he's ill, there's stuff happening in his body, and you have to bring him to medical care?
So we have a treatment plan. So the plan is to try and treat at home. We have like a gel that you put in the gums to try and bring the blood sugars back up, and the plan is to try that, and then you have to leave it like 15-20 minutes, and then if that doesn't work, then use another tube of that. It's like pure sugar gel basically, and then if that were to not resolve the inflammation, like if that wasn't to bring it up with the blood sugars, then we would take him back into hospital, essentially.
Gotcha.
But since January, we've been able to treat them from home, and he's not had to escalate to that next step, so that's good. If you think about how he was sort of 6 months to how he is now, the progression as he gets older, he'll have better and better responses, like as he has over the last 12 months improved. That should only improve more as he gets older. I mentioned to you when we were chatting that I am pregnant again.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks. And we're due in 9 weeks, and we're hopeful that we don't have to go through this again ever.
Yeah, right. I know. So you passed your glucose test this pregnancy.
Yes, actually, they've done it twice so far, and I've passed both times. However, when having my ultrasounds, the baby is showing some signs of being a diabetes baby, if that makes sense. He's got the he's larger than average, and he's got a large abdomen reading as well. So they are concerned. Yeah. They are concerned, and they are keeping an eye on it. I'm having regular scans every 2 weeks at the minute.
Okay. So did they test you in your first trimester for your A1C?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then again just before my 3rd trimester.
Great. And you guys don't do the 1 hour. You said you just do the 3-hour test.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you're not diagnosed, but your baby is reading as though he would be a large baby. And well, I don't know if this is, if they actually diagnosed you as having placental failure the first pregnancy, but I would assume that that's what they're concerned about again this pregnancy. Is that right?
Yeah, because I don't know all the technical ins and outs of it, but they tested my placenta after my C-section, and they found it had a high level of gas that it shouldn't have in there. and that's why they think that my placenta was failing, basically.
Oh,
But I know from my own research that uncontrolled blood sugars can cause the placenta to age.
right.
And that's why this pregnancy they've been trying to monitor me more. But obviously, not having the diagnosis of the gestational diabetes, but the signs of having it with the baby is obviously a cause for concern. But we'll see how we
Right.
get on.
So are they expecting to induce you, or maybe, I wouldn't think you would have, well, in an emergent situation, I guess, have a C-section. I don't know, health issues you have surrounding you, but is there like a scheduled time frame where they're looking at probably they're going to have to take the baby?
They will know more after we have a scan next week. They want to do
Okay.
a comparison because his abdomen was measuring large on the last scan. They want to do a comparison for the scan next week and make a plan from there, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. And are you testing your blood sugars on your own right now to keep track?
Yes. I've had some things I can't eat, so I can't eat cereal, which is annoying. um,
Yeah.
it's a nice easy meal when you have a toddler running around.
Yes.
But I've mostly been okay. Like I said, and if I've tested and it's not been okay, then I've been able to cut that out of my diet. So they think rather than diabetes, I might have some glucose intolerance this time around, so where I'm just a bit more sensitive to it.
Yeah.
And it's not gone into full blown diabetes. So hopefully the baby won't
Right.
have the same complications. Um, I think obviously I'm part of this group on Facebook for the gestational diabetes mothers, and I
Mm-hmm.
think not all of them. I don't think they're aware of their hard work that they're putting in to look after their blood sugars. How important it is. Even though it's really hard, they're doing a great job, and they're possibly stopping their child from having to go through what my child went through. If you think about
Yeah.
how much like it's it is on there quite a lot that everyone hates testing their blood sugars. Well, it's a lot worse doing it to your newborn baby. um, you know,
Yeah.
I just think I don't think that they necessarily understand or appreciate that their hard work is actually making a difference. I know it's really hard to follow that diet and not eat your pregnancy cravings and everything, but they are making a difference, and that's why that's why I agreed to speak to you, because I just really feel on there that they don't understand how amazing they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I was a part of the group when I had gestational diabetes, and people would post their pictures of their baby when they were born and say, every prick was worth it, and I would just kind of roll my eyes like, yeah, whatever, but I hate this right now, and I mean that's what it was. I was in a self-pity mode, and hey, I mean, whatever, that's what it was for the time, and that's okay. But um when my child was born and she had to have her sugars tested, and to hear her scream when it was on her heel that they tested, and it
Yeah,
just, I mean, my entire body just cringed. I hated it. um, and so I was like, man, maybe if I did better uh, at doing this, then they wouldn't have had to do that. But that's not the case. They would have had to test her sugars anyway, but thankfully, it was only a couple of times that they had to test her sugars like that, and she normalized, I think, on her third test after being born.
that's
But
good.
man, yeah.
I never knew that gestational diabetes could have such an effect on an unborn baby. I thought that it might be born a bit fat,
Yeah.
and that would be it. So I think what you're doing is great, trying to get people to understand that it's not just about that, and if it can make a difference to anyone, or even help them eat another egg instead of a bowl of cereal, then
Yes.
I think that's a great thing. And I think gestational diabetes is hard on mothers, because you have all these different cravings and different things, and you don't want to cook, or you got, because you're so tired from the pregnancy. And I think we don't do ourselves enough credit for it.
Yeah, I know, because it's hard work, and especially it's even harder when we don't have the support from our loved ones, especially the ones that are in our household, because they don't understand it, and they might not be sympathetic towards it, but it is hard work, and it's taxing mentally and emotionally, and plus, it's just one more thing on top of pregnancy. Pregnancy is, for some people, it's hard, even though our bodies are made for it, but there's a lot that comes along with it. So in regards to your baby now measuring large, there are babies that are born considered large, even though there's no gestational diabetes diagnosis. So it's not super strange that you're not having blood sugar issues, but your baby is still measuring large, so just for any mom out there who might be
Yes.
considering that. Okay, guys, what a crazy journey, right? It just goes to show you that we do program our child's metabolism by the foods that we eat. I'm reminded of what Hippocrates said: let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So what we do put into our bodies does affect us, and it affects our baby. It actually programs our baby. It's so crazy to think about it in that light, but that's exactly what's happening. And for Jorden to be told that she passed her glucose test when in actuality she didn't, oh man, can you imagine that type of feeling? But not only that, not only was she told 6 weeks late that she actually didn't pass it, but she had to wait another week to get guidance on how to actually manage her blood sugars. Guys, that is not a one-off situation. That happens a lot. In fact, it happened to me. And that's why I created the Gestational Diabetic, because in those situations where a person has to wait a week, for me, it was 2 weeks. For one person that I talked to on Reddit, it's so insane. She had to wait over a month. I think it was closer to 2 months, if I'm not mistaken, just to talk to a dietitian, because it had to do with her insurance, the area she was in, and the access to dietitians and dietitians that could advise in this matter. So that's why the Gestational Diabetic is here, is to cover that interim period where you're diagnosed and then you finally get to meet with a dietitian. For some people, it's immediate, and that's awesome. That's great. But for others, that's just not the situation. So do me a favor, guys, take a look around the site and let me know what's missing. What would you like on the site that you would find helpful, that you think would help other moms? And I listen to all the comments and emails that I receive, and I do make changes to the site based on those recommendations. So I'm so appreciative of that, guys. Thank you so much. So if you do find something that you want to recommend to me, you can scroll down to the bottom of any page on the website and you'll see a comment section. Go ahead and leave it there, or there's also a contact me page that you can send me an email on. This is episode 4, and if you wanted to go to the blog post linked to this episode to see the notes about cholestasis and the risk factors and all that, you can go to the gestationaldiabetic.com/4. Guys, this was great. Thank you so much, Jorden, for coming on and sharing your story and wanting to help and encourage other moms. Remember, guys, every prick is worth it.